What would you do if the house of your worst nightmares suddenly called to you? Rachel thought it was just another creepy story until the door swung open by itself and the darkness inside seemed to beckon her in. The house, abandoned for years, had a dark secret, one that was waiting for someone just like her. As Rachel ventured deeper, strange things began to happen. Noises, shadows, whispers, and a haunting presence she couldn't explain. But the most chilling part? She wasn't alone. This wasn't a house, it was a trap, and it wanted her. Stay with me until the end, because once you step inside, you'll never want to leave. The night was thick with darkness as dense fog rolled over the town, hiding sinister secrets. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and everything was eerily silent. In this town, fear wasn't just a feeling, it was a living, breathing entity. And it had been waiting. Rachel had never believed in stories about ghosts or haunted houses. But as she stood in front of the house, something gnawed at her. The air felt heavy, as if it had its own heartbeat. This wasn't a story. This was real. She had heard the rumors. The house at the end of the street had once been home to a family, but they were long gone. People had gone missing, and others had come back, not quite the same. Stories of strange noises and shadows that didn't belong filled the air, making anyone who dared to venture near the house turn away. But here she was standing at the door. The door creaked open of its own accord, inviting her in. The cold air rushed past her, sending chills through her body. She couldn't stop herself. Curiosity pushed her forward. Inside, the house seemed to swallow her whole. The floors creaked, the shadows seemed to dance just out of sight, and the silence was suffocating. Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, waiting for her to make a wrong move. Suddenly, a door slammed shut behind her. Rachel froze. There was no one else in the house. Was there? A low whisper filled the air, unintelligible but thick with a warning. The floor beneath her seemed to pulse, alive with some unseen energy. Panic crept into her chest. She was trapped. Then came the footsteps. At first, they were slow, almost methodical. But then they picked up speed. Her heart raced, and her flashlight flickered out, leaving her in complete darkness. She spun around, breath caught in her throat, and saw nothing. Yet, the footsteps grew louder. "Who's there?" she whispered, but her voice was barely audible in the thick silence. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, gaunt figure, face hidden by a dark hood. It moved toward her slowly, deliberately, its eyes cold and empty. And then another figure appeared. And then another. They emerged from the dark corners of the house, their movements jerky and unnatural, like twisted reflections of human form. Their eyes, wide, hollow, lifeless, stared at her with a hunger that made her stomach churn. The figures circled her. Rachel's breath hitched in her chest. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't respond. The air was thick, heavy, as if the house itself was holding her in place. One of the figures stepped forward, its hand outstretched, fingers long and twisted like claws. Rachel's mind raced. She had to run. She turned and bolted toward the nearest exit, but the house seemed to fight her every step. Doors slammed shut, and the floor groaned as if trying to hold her inside. She pushed against the door, but it wouldn't budge. The figures were everywhere now, their eyes fixed on her, closing in, their footsteps relentless. In a final burst of adrenaline, Rachel forced her way through the door, her heart pounding. The fog outside swallowed her whole, and for a moment, she thought she might escape. But the presence, the hunger, the weight of it, it was still there, lurking just behind her. The house had claimed its next victim. Rachel would never be seen again, but the house would remain, waiting for the next curious soul to wander in, just like she had. The darkness always catches up, and once it has you, it will never let you go.